They say you never truly know someone, but what if that someone is your wife and your best friend? And what if overnight they both found a way to not only stab you in the back, but to try and destroy everything you've ever built? I'm Ethan, and a year ago, my life was the definition of perfect. A thriving business, the woman of my dreams by my side, until an email with a broken heart and a photo shattered everything. What I didn't know was that this rock bottom was actually a springboard to millions, and all because of an old piece of paper that my wife ironically helped me write. Get ready to hear the story of how the greatest betrayal of my life turned me into the richest man I've ever been, and how fate, or perhaps bureaucracy, gave me the perfect revenge. This isn't a story of sadness. It's a story of overcoming, unbelievable twists, and a contract that for some reason nobody bothered to read. It all started, like the best business stories, with a terrible idea on a bar napkin. Me and Marcus were recent grads, full of ambition and, honestly, with nothing to lose. I had the technical skills, an obsession with optimizing systems no one else understood. Marcus was the showman. He could sell ice to an Eskimo in winter. He saw the market, I saw the engine. We were yin and yang. Our first office was my bachelor apartment. It smelled like a horrible mix of old coffee and instant noodles. We worked 18-hour days. There were times when payroll was 24 hours from bouncing, and Marcus would go out, make 3 calls, and somehow land an angel investment that saved us. He wasn't my partner. He was my brother. I trusted him with my life. In 5 years, we turned that bar napkin into Momentum Dynamics, a company valued in the 8 figures, with 50 employees and a future that seemed to have no ceiling. And then there was Claire. I met her at a business law seminar. I was there to understand the basics. She was there as a guest speaker. She was brilliant, a corporate lawyer with a mind that cut like a razor. She was beautiful, yes, but it was her intelligence that hooked me. She understood our vision. More than that, she saw the pitfalls that neither I nor Marcus saw. When we got married, it was natural for her to become our chief legal counsel. She structured our contracts, protected our intellectual property. She was our firewall. As a gesture of love and trust, and because she was so vital, I made sure she had a small equity stake in the company. We're a team at home and in business, I told her the night we signed the papers in our home office. We were the perfect trinity. Me, the builder, Marcus, the seller, Claire, the protector. Our weekends were barbecues in my backyard. Marcus was the fun uncle for our plans to have kids. Claire and I were the best man and maid of honor at his wedding. Our lives weren't just intertwined, they were welded together. We had it all. A company that was a cash machine, a friendship that was a fortress, and a marriage that was my safe harbor. At least, that's what I saw. The truth is, while I was busy building the engine, the 2 passengers closest to me were conspiring to steal the car. And the key was in the glove box the entire time, in a document that Claire herself had drafted. When you're on top of the world, you don't look down. You're too busy looking at the horizon. The first loose thread was so small, I didn't even notice it. It was a Wednesday. We had just closed the biggest contract in our history, a deal Marcus had been chasing for months. The tradition was clear. The whole team goes to our favorite bar, the Foundry, and the first round was on me. I sent the email to the entire company. Victory, Foundry at 6 p.m. At 5:45 p.m., I got a text from Marcus. Man, congrats to us. But I'm stuck in monstrous traffic coming from an external meeting. Can't make it. Celebrate for me. I thought it was odd. An external meeting I didn't know about. But hey, he was the salesman, always on the move. No problem. At 5:50 p.m., Claire calls me. Love, congratulations. What wonderful news. I am exhausted, with a terrible migraine from that hearing today. I'm going straight home, taking some medicine and passing out. I'm sorry, celebrate for us. Sure, a coincidence. The 2 most important people in my life on the day of our biggest victory were suddenly unavailable. but they were tired. The work was hard. I understood. I went to the bar, bought the round, congratulated the team, and went home early, expecting to find Claire asleep. When I got there, her car wasn't in the garage. I called. It went to voicemail. "Hey, love, weird. I thought you were home. Where did you park? Call me." An hour later, she arrived. Oh my God, the migraine was so bad I stopped at the 24-hour pharmacy downtown to get stronger medicine, and the traffic was awful. She seemed tired. She kissed me. Her scent, it wasn't her perfume. There was a faint smell of cologne, men's cologne. "What's that smell?" I asked. She laughed, a little too nervously. "Oh, it must be from the opposing counsel. That guy bathes in cheap cologne. I was stuck in a conference room with him all day. I need a shower." It seemed plausible. Why wouldn't it? I wanted it to be. I needed it to be. But something didn't add up. Marcus's monstrous traffic jam, Claire's migraine. That night I did something I had never done. I felt dirty for it. I opened the GPS tracking system we installed on the company's executive cars for insurance purposes. Marcus's car wasn't at any external meeting. The GPS showed he spent 2 hours that afternoon parked in a residential neighborhood on the other side of town, a neighborhood where we had no clients. Then I pulled up Claire's phone location history, which we shared for safety. Her phone wasn't at the 24-hour pharmacy downtown. Her location pin at exactly 5:45 p.m. was in the same residential neighborhood as Marcus's car. 2 streets over. I closed the laptop. My heart was beating so hard it felt like it would come out of my throat. No, it couldn't be. The car tracker must be faulty. Her phone's GPS must have pinged the wrong tower. They were system failures. Bugs. Things that I, as a tech guy, knew happened all the time. I was looking for bugs in the system when the real flaw was in my marriage and my friendship. I told myself it was paranoia. I forced myself to go to bed. But I didn't sleep. I just lay there, listening to the calm breathing of the woman I loved, and for the first time in my life I was afraid of her. The next 2 weeks were a silent hell. I became a ghost in my own life. I smiled in meetings. I kissed Claire in the morning. I slapped Marcus on the back in the office, and every second I felt like an actor in a terrible play. I looked for more clues, but they got careful. Or maybe I had just seen a momentary glitch. I almost convinced myself I was wrong. Almost. Then, the West Coast Synergy Conference appeared on the calendar. It was a major event in San Francisco. Marcus, as head of strategy, had to go. This was normal. What wasn't normal was when Claire mentioned casually over dinner a week before, "Oh, love, I forgot to tell you, remember that patent issue we were having with the Palo Alto startup? They can only meet with me next week. It makes more sense for me to just go with Marcus to San Francisco and handle it in person. Saves on airfare." There it was, the same cold feeling in my stomach. The patent issue. I had resolved that with an email 3 days ago. They didn't know I knew that. "Of course, love," I said, and my smile felt like it was made of glass. "That's a great idea. Maximum efficiency." They flew out on Thursday. The conference was Friday and Saturday. They were supposed to return on Sunday. I told them I had an unavoidable investor meeting in another city on Friday. It was a lie. On Thursday night, I caught the last flight to San Francisco. I didn't have a plan. I didn't know what I was going to do. I just needed to see. I needed them to be in separate rooms. I needed all of this to be an elaborate paranoia in my head. I checked into the same hotel, the St. Regis. It was one of those luxurious places the company paid for. I used a fake name, paid with my personal credit card. The receptionist, a young man who looked bored, confirmed the reservation without even looking at me. I stood in the lobby, behind a marble pillar, for an hour. I felt like an idiot, a B-movie detective. What was I doing? Then the elevator opened. They walked out, laughing. Marcus had his arm casually slung over Claire's shoulder. She was leaning into him, her head resting on his chest. They didn't look like colleagues celebrating a business trip. They looked like a couple coming back from a romantic dinner. They walked towards the lobby bar. Marcus said something in her ear, and she let out that laugh, that throaty, low laugh. The laugh I thought was mine. I followed them, keeping my distance. They didn't order 2 drinks. They ordered a bottle of expensive wine, our wine, Opus 1. And then I saw it. The touch. Marcus gently ran his thumb over her wedding ring. And she covered his hand with hers. I didn't need to see any more. I didn't need to see them get on the elevator together. I didn't need to go to room 1205, which I knew was registered only in Marcus's name. I turned around and walked out of the hotel. The cold San Francisco night air hit my face, but I didn't feel it. I was completely numb. I walked, I don't know for how long. I think I saw the sun rise over the bay. That GPS wasn't a bug. The cologne wasn't the lawyer's. The woman I loved and the man I called my brother hadn't just betrayed me. They were humiliating me. They were using my company's money, my success, to finance their affair right under my nose. In that moment, sitting on a cold bench facing the Golden Gate Bridge, the grief turned into something else, something cold and hard. It wasn't sadness anymore. It was rage, a quiet, calculating rage. I wasn't going to break. I wasn't going to scream. I took the first flight back home. I had 36 hours until they returned, 36 hours to decide how I was going to dismantle their lives, just as they had dismantled mine. The next 36 hours were the longest of my life, but they weren't hours of grief. They were hours of preparation. While they were at 30,000 feet, sipping wine and watching movies, I was in my home office with 3 monitors lit up. I wasn't looking at our wedding photos. I was analyzing spreadsheets, balance sheets, employee contracts, shareholder agreements. I read every line of every document Momentum Dynamics had ever produced. I dove into the emails. I tracked expenses, their trip to San Francisco, paid by the company, the luxury hotel room, paid by the company, the $300 bottle of wine in the lobby, billed to the room, paid by the company. I was no longer dealing with a personal betrayal. I was dealing with fraud. They arrived on Sunday night, around 10 p.m. I heard the Uber pull up. I heard the keys in the door. I heard the muffled laughter as they came inside, dragging their suitcases. I was waiting in the living room. The lights were off, except for a single lamp. "Love? Are you there?" "Wow, it's dark," Claire said, flicking on the hall light. They saw me. I was sitting, perfectly still, in the armchair. "Hey, Ethan, you scared us," Marcus said, forcing a laugh. "Man, you won't believe what—" "How was the St. Regis?" I asked. My voice came out cold, colder than I expected. The smiles froze. They both stopped, suitcases still in hand. "What?" Claire said. "It was fine, tiring. The conference was—" "I didn't ask about the conference," I interrupted. "I asked about the hotel. Did you enjoy the room service and the wine in the lobby bar? The Opus 1. Always a good choice." Claire's face went white. For the first time in her life, I saw her speechless. Marcus, on the other hand, tried to go on the offensive. "Dude, what the hell are you talking about? Have you been drinking?" he said, trying to sound indignant. I stood up slowly. "I was there, Marcus. On Thursday. I saw you in the lobby. I saw your arm around her, Claire. I saw you laugh. I saw you share that bottle of wine." "You're insane!" Claire finally exploded. Her voice was an octave higher. "Are you spying on us? It was a business trip. Marcus was comforting me about a stressful day. You're paranoid." "Paranoid," I repeated as if testing the word. "That's a good word." "Yeah, paranoid," Marcus yelled. "We're partners, friends, and you think that me and your wife—" "You're sick, man. We work together. We have dinner together. You're seeing things." They were good, coordinated. The indignation seemed almost real. If I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, maybe even I would have doubted. But I had one last card. "You're right," I said calmly, walking to my desk. I must have misunderstood. The lobby was dark. My imagination must be running wild. I picked up a document from the printer. But there's just one thing I don't understand. You were in separate rooms, of course. The conference was Friday and Saturday. You came back Sunday, so can you explain this? I tossed the paper onto the coffee table. They looked. It wasn't a photo. It was the itemized bill for room 1205, Marcus's room. 3 days, 3 breakfasts for 2, in the same room, a room that Claire had no key for, unless she never left it. I looked at Claire. Her face crumpled. The tears she was holding back began to fall. She wasn't crying from sadness. She was crying from rage at being caught. Marcus said nothing. He just stared at the paper, then at me. The showman had run out of script. "Get out," I said. "What?" Claire whispered. "Take your bags and get out of my house now." "You can't kick me out," she screamed. "This house is mine too. Half of it is mine." "You're right," I said. "Legally, you are. But if you don't leave right now, I will call the police and report you both for corporate fraud, for the misuse of company funds to finance your affair. And I have the receipts." Marcus grabbed his suitcase. He looked at Claire. "Let's go." "Marcus!" she shrieked. "Let's go, Claire, now." She looked at me, her face red with tears and hatred. "You will regret this. You're going to lose everything. We will destroy you at the company." She grabbed her bag, and they left. I heard the front door slam, and then, for the first time in 48 hours, I was alone. The silence in the house was deafening. The war had just begun, but they didn't know. I already had the silver bullet. The silence in my house lasted exactly 8 hours. On Monday, at 9:01 a.m., my email exploded. The first email was from a law firm I didn't recognize, representing Marcus. The subject, Proposal for Accelerated Partnership Dissolution. The second email was from another firm, even more expensive, representing Claire. The subject, Notification of Divorce Action and Division of Assets. Their strategy was clear. A coordinated attack, a legal shock and awe. Marcus and Claire together held a larger percentage of the company than I did. They were going to steamroll me. They would force me to sell my shares for pennies on the dollar, claiming I was emotionally unstable and a risk to the business. Claire would demand half of my remaining shares in the divorce. In the end, they would have everything, and I'd walk away with the ashes. They thought I was at home crying in the dark. They were wrong. I didn't hire a divorce lawyer. I hired Ms. Davenport. Ms. Davenport wasn't a family lawyer. She was a corporate liquidator, a woman known for dismantling empires in boardrooms. I walked into her office not with tears, but with a box containing every document from the company. Hotel receipts, wine invoices, and most importantly, the original articles of incorporation for Momentum Dynamics. Miss Davenport, they're accusing me of emotional instability. They want to force a buyout. Ethan, let's be blunt. They have the votes. He's your partner, she's your wife, and a minority shareholder. In a board vote, you lose. They will claim your discovery of the affair is a personal distraction that makes you unfit to lead. It's a classic move. They'll grind you down, take the company, and you'll pay for the divorce with whatever's left. Unless what? Unless there's something in here. We spent the next 48 hours in that room. Page by page. It was almost 80 pages of standard legal jargon. I was exhausted, my eyes were burning, and then I saw it. It wasn't in the main body of the contract, it was in an appendix, Addendum C1, an addendum I had asked for, and that Claire herself had drafted years ago. Love, but what if one of us, I don't know, goes crazy, tries to steal a client, or uses company money for something personal? We need a mutual protection clause. Oh, you and your conspiracy theories. That's so dramatic. No one ever reads the addendums. But fine, I'll put in a bad actor clause. Will it make you sleep better? The addendum was titled Clause of Fiduciary Conduct and Conflict of Interest. Ms. Davenport read it aloud, slowly. The clause stipulated that any shareholder, including me, Marcus, and Claire, who was proven guilty of gross misconduct, would forfeit their voting rights. What's gross misconduct? I asked. Ms. Davenport kept reading. Gross misconduct includes, but is not limited to, fraud, embezzlement of corporate funds, or engaging in a personal relationship with another shareholder or key employee that creates a direct and prejudicial conflict of interest, resulting in financial or reputational harm to the company or its founders. I couldn't breathe. Claire herself had written this. But it gets better, Ms. Davenport said, and a thin smile appeared on her face. In the event of such a violation, she continued, the offending shareholders' shares will not be sold on the market. They will be subject to a forced buyout option by the non-offending shareholders at the original book value of acquisition. The original book value. Not the current market value, which was in the millions, the original value. Marcus's shares? He bought them for $50,000 back when the company was just an idea. I could buy his entire stake for $50,000. And Claire's shares? The ones I gave her as a gesture of love? The original acquisition value in the contract was $1. A single symbolic dollar. She had ignored it. In her arrogance, in her certainty that this dramatic clause would never apply to her, the smartest lawyer I knew had just handed me the keys to the kingdom. They thought they were going to buy me out for pennies. They didn't know I was about to buy them out for almost nothing. The meeting was set for the following Wednesday at 10 a.m. Neutral territory. The largest conference room at the law firm representing Marcus. They wanted to intimidate me. I walked in at 10 a.m. sharp with Miss Davenport at my side. They were already there. All three of them. Marcus, Claire, and to my surprise, a third. Carla, our chief financial officer, the person who signed the checks. She wouldn't look at me. She was pale. Oh, I understood. They weren't just attacking me legally. They were staging a coup. They had brought the CFO to their side to freeze the accounts. On the other side of the table, 6 people stared at me. Marcus and his lawyer, Claire and her lawyer, and Carla, the CFO, with her own lawyer. It was an army, 7 against 2. They looked smug. Claire had her face composed, a mask of cold professionalism. Marcus looked tense, but arrogant. They thought this was the execution, my execution. Marcus's lawyer, an older man with an expensive watch, began. Good morning. We are here to finalize the unavoidable dissolution of this partnership. Given the emotional volatility demonstrated by Mr. Ethan and his baseless accusations, my clients, along with the chief financial officer, agree that his continued leadership is an existential risk to momentum dynamics. He pushed a document across the table at me. This is a generous buyout offer. We will purchase your stake at current market value minus a 30% risk discount. You walk away with some money, the company survives your personal crisis, and we all move on. Sign it, and you can avoid a humiliating divorce proceeding and a legal battle you cannot win. I looked at Claire. She gave a slight nod, as if she were doing me a favor. I looked at the offer. It was an insult. They were trying to rob me blind. I looked at Ms. Davenport. She gave an almost imperceptible smile. Showtime. Thank you, Dr. Martins. It's a creative offer. But we're rejecting it. The lawyer scoffed. Rejecting it? On what grounds? We have the votes. We have the CFO. The company is on our side. You're right, you had the votes, plural. But it turns out, according to the company's original articles of incorporation, you no longer have the right to vote. None of you. What you have in front of you is a formal notification of breach of Addendum C1 of the Articles of Incorporation, the clause of fiduciary conduct and conflict of interest. A clause, Mrs. Clare, that you yourself brilliantly drafted in 2019. Clare's face faltered. It was fast, but I saw it. The panic. She remembered. Her lawyer grabbed the paper. This is absurd. What conduct? I'm glad you asked. Let's start with embezzlement of corporate funds. This is the invoice from the St. Regis Hotel in San Francisco, room 1205, registered in Mr. Marcus's name, but paid for by the corporate account. And here, room service. Breakfast for 2. 3 days in a row. And here, the bar tab. Opus 1 wine, $300. Doesn't seem like a legitimate business expense. Seems more like a romantic weekend, paid for by the company you're trying to protect. Marcus's lawyer went quiet. The CFO, Carla, looked like she was going to be sick. She knew she had authorized those payments. And that, gentleman, brings us to the second violation, engaging in a personal relationship with another shareholder. That creates a direct and prejudicial conflict of interest. Or I'd say, defrauding the company to finance an affair between two key shareholders fits that description perfectly. This is bullshit. You can't prove anything. We'll sue you for slander. We don't have to prove it in a court of law, Mr. Marcus. We only have to prove it to the board. And since your voting rights have been revoked by the breach, the board, at this moment, consists only of my client, and he, believe me, is convinced. The silence in the room was heavy. The lawyers frantically flipped through the papers, looking for a loophole. And then Claire spoke, her voice shaking with rage. What do you want, Ethan? I looked at her. For the first time, I didn't see my wife. I just saw an opponent. I nodded to Miss Davenport. What do we want? We want what Addendum C1 stipulates. In the event of a breach, the offending shareholder is subject to a forced buyout option at the original book value. She pulled 2 checks from her briefcase. Cashier's checks. Mr. Marcus, your original stake was acquired for $50,000. Here is a check for $50,000. In exchange, you will sign over the full transfer of your shares. Mr. Clare, your shareholding, as a gesture of goodwill from my client at the time, was acquired for the symbolic value of $1. We'll be generous and pay in cash. In exchange, you will sign over the full transfer of your shares. The room exploded. Marcus's lawyer was yelling, extortion. Claire's lawyer was yelling, litigation. Marcus looked like he'd been stabbed. Claire, however, was quiet. She was staring at the addendum, the one she wrote. She knew. She knew she was trapped. You have 2 options. Option A, you sign. The transfer is made. Mr. Ethan becomes the sole owner of the company, and, as a gesture of goodwill, he will not press criminal charges for the fraud. Ms. Claire's divorce will proceed, but she will have no claim to any part of the company she no longer owns. Option B, you don't sign. We go to court. We attach these receipts, the GPS logs, the hotel invoice, as public evidence. We sue you civilly and criminally for fraud. We destroy your professional reputations forever, and in the end, we will still win and get the shares for the same price. The choice is yours. You have 5 minutes. I didn't say a word. I just watched Marcus and Claire staring at each other. The hatred between them was palpable. Their alliance had evaporated. They weren't partners anymore, just 2 people caught in the same trap. No one yelled anymore. Marcus's lawyer tried to sputter something about coercion, but Miss Davenport just raised an eyebrow and pointed at the pile of fraud receipts. I watched Claire. The woman I loved, the woman who reviewed my will, picked up the pen. Her hands were shaking, but not from sadness. From pure, impotent rage, she signed the document transferring her entire stake to me for the value of $1. Marcus was next. He didn't even look at the papers. He just signed, threw the pen on the table, and walked out of the room without a word. He didn't look at Claire, he didn't look at me, he just evaporated. In less than 15 minutes, I had walked into that room as a besieged minority shareholder and walked out as the sole 100% owner of Momentum Dynamics. Total acquisition cost, $50,001. What happened to them? I heard they tried to sue each other. Marcus blamed her for writing the addendum. She blamed him for being careless with the receipts. The alliance forged in betrayal crumbled under the weight of greed. The last I heard, Marcus was selling insurance in another state, and Claire had her law license suspended for unethical conduct. Following an anonymous tip, Ms. Davenport was very thorough. They didn't just lose the company, they lost everything, and me. The first month was the hardest. I had to clean house. I had to fire the CFO and anyone loyal to Marcus. But for the first time, the company was quiet. No politics, no drama, just work. With 100% control, I could finally make the decisions Marcus had always blocked as too risky, and Claire had vetoed for legal complications. I invested everything into a new product line, something I believed was the future. 6 months went by. The company didn't just survive, it exploded. The new product line was an absolute success. And then I got an email. It was from Apex Innovations, our biggest competitor, the same company that tried to buy us 3 years earlier. Back then, Marcus and Claire demanded such an absurd valuation that Apex laughed and hung up. Now they were back, and they saw our new growth. They offered me $50 million. I said no. They came back 2 days later, $75 million. I said no. On Friday, their CEO called me personally. "Ethan, what do you want? Name your number." I told him my number, $100 million. Last week, the sale was finalized. I walked out of that building for the last time, not as a cheated husband or a betrayed partner, but as a multi-millionaire. It's ironic, isn't it? My video title says an old contract made me a millionaire. But the truth is, the contract didn't do anything. It just sat there, waiting. It was their actions, their arrogance, their certainty that they were smarter than everyone, including the lawyer who drafted her own prison sentence. My wife and my best friend stabbed me in the back. They tried to take everything from me, but in the process, they accidentally cleared the path, removed every obstacle, and forced me to take full control, just in time for me to become the millionaire they always dreamed of being. Thank you for listening to my story. If you believe that karma eventually finds its way, or if you simply appreciate a story where the tables are turned, show your support by liking this video. Subscribe to this channel so you don't miss the next story. And finally, if you know someone who needs a reminder that the game isn't over until the final contract is read, share this video with them.